Hi traders, welcome back to the channel. So I want to have a brief chat about some of the things I'm getting feedback on and hearing about in these sort of crazy markets. And I'll even give you some quotes here I'm getting from whether it's Slack community or YouTube communities. I was doing fine and then blew up because of, US president, lack of a better word. I hear a lot of sort of complaining about the news, and it's been a struggle. And I see a lot of, sort of traders, particularly on the newer side, just getting frustrated. And, I've experienced it too. I mean, the volatility, I love vol, but it's just sometimes too much, particularly for my strategy. So overall, year to date, I'm okay, but I'm not having like my home run year, and I need a couple more home runs, which I'm poised to do, but we'll see what happens. I mean, time will tell, particularly on the swing side. Scalping wise though, I'm having a great year. So, I'm not sure. I mean, I use a particular strategy that we introduced a few weeks ago. So to the YouTube community, click on the link below. You have all the information on how to do that. It applies to swing trading, but I use it for scalping too. So it's worked out great. But one of the things I told one of the traders too, and I've always encouraged people to do well, but you have to understand market conditions. I mean, if you're going to go out into the rain and not bring an umbrella, well, I don't know, maybe you should bring an umbrella. And if it's thundering and lightning, maybe just hold off and go later in the day. Baseball games in the US and in Japan, if they're played outside and it starts to rain with lightning, they cancel the game, or they postpone it, or they delay it, right? Well, why don't traders do that too? I mean, it's okay to take some time and wait for things to settle down. I know traders, and I'm a junkie too, like everyone else, but I always want to be in the game. If you're not, quote, trading, you're not trading. But I think, we need to rethink that, particularly in markets where they're just not accommodating to your strategy. Now, the one way to do it is maybe have another strategy that takes advantage of volatility. I mean, I find options premium selling to be a great shift to mix that up in these environments. It's not going to give you, the home runs that you want, but it'll keep the sort of income stream going, and fairly easily too. I mean, their premiums are pretty rich. So, think about that. But having another strategy, but sometimes just sitting out. I mean, that's what really true traders do, all right? Or they reduce size, things like that. I mean, I had to say something to one trader who just kept bitching about markets and stuff, and it was everything but themselves. And I'll even quote you, I told the developing trader, perhaps it's best to find another profession. And I very rarely do that because I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and I am a true believer, and this is why I do this, is you can take someone who just doesn't have a clue about trading and make them profitable. It takes time, takes discipline, but you can identify things, you work on them, and then you move forward, and eventually they stop making the mistakes. And then eventually, the numbers, the math, the positive expectancy just catches up with them. But when you start blaming everybody and blaming the markets, and I blamed some U.S. leadership as well. I mean, I've done that, so I'll give them that one. But I think the key here is to, and I hope I'm not sounding too sort of philosophical about markets, but you kind of have to respect the markets. Understand that it's not a game that we can play every day, or the edge isn't there for us every day. It's like we have to wait for the opportunity to strike, and then we hit. And that waiting is sometimes frustrating, particularly for newer traders and junkies like myself, like I said. So understand this sort of markets and this environment I always look at this as sort of like we're in a jungle, and there's this big monster, and you're a little animal, walking up to the legs, and he's chewing on the crumb, and he puts the crumbs on the ground. Not really concerned if you eat a few crumbs right by him and stuff. But if you start challenging him, say, hey, give me that big hunk of meat in your hand or whatever, and start fighting him, the markets or this animal will crush you, right? But if you just grab crumbs, and I've kind of made a career of this, kind of being kind of quiet and subtle and just taking my trade and getting out. Taking my trade, get the hell out, right? But when you start fighting markets, you're done. And I've done this, I know from personal experience too, all right? When you start getting too cocky, you start being aggressive, particularly in these markets, you will pay. The market will win every single time. So these are a few things that I want you to think about, all right? Particularly in these markets, particularly if you're struggling as well, all right? I'll go right down the list. We can put a little scroll in the bottom too, all right? Assess your trading plan and think about, is it adaptable in volatile markets, all right? I see some traders who have, say, 15 pip target, right? But then the volatility triples, and what's their target? 15 pips. No, it should adjust accordingly. Of course you're getting, whipped out of trades and stuff because you're not adjusting your risk and even your reward. Give yourself a bigger reward. At the same time, you have to adjust and give yourself more room on the downside. That may mean lowering size. That's fine too. But understand that it's really important that you have a strategy that's adaptable in volatile markets. All right, another example is I see trading plans that say, I won't risk more than 20 points on the S&P futures. Well, that's fine. I mean, you have that. But understand that a lot of your strategies may not apply then. So you're going to be sitting out a lot. Again, that's also fine. All right. But understand that if you have that sort of line in the sand, either reduce size or go to micros. And again, if it doesn't accommodate, stand aside. Or have strategies that can accommodate in volatile markets, have that flexibility, all right? Picking up that crumbs next to the monster. All right, next. Do you have a strategy that allows you flexibility in your exit management? For example, when volatility is high, people ask me all the time, hey, Mike, do you trail or do you take stiff targets? Depends. In my trading plan, I say if the volatility, and I define that as the VIX, is higher than X, I will trail based on market context and things like that. But I'm more open to trail, and my trading plan allows me to. So it's not a black and white answer. It's not a binary answer, right? Does your trading plan have that ability to be flexible, particularly with exit management? All right, take a look and see. Maybe you need to make an adjustment. For me personally, I've been using more options premium selling techniques. The volatility is too high, and that means the premium is rich. All right, and I can do wide credit spreads, even throw in an iron condor or even a naked put. All right, gives me a lot of time, a lot of room to make it work. And it's kind of a rinse, wash, repeat. Having tenants in the house, it's not as sexy as having actual quote real trades on, but it really is a good shift and aligns with volatile markets. And I will continue to do that as long as volatility sneaks its ugly head. The other thing I want you to think about is if you have multiple positions on, think about how frequently you monitor your position, your portfolio delta, all right? If you have one position on, that's fine. But if you have 5 positions on and they're all long US dollar, we have a problem, all right? Particularly in volatile markets. Maybe you can get away with it, when things are sort of choppy. But in volatile markets, we need to make sure our portfolio delta is in line. And if you have more than 3 or 4 positions, double check. Maybe they're all long tech, or maybe all long short tech, and you have a short covering rally, and guess what? Your quote, great strategy is now you have a problem child on your hands. So start to look more at portfolio delta. Is it balanced? Is it mixed? Or maybe you just have too many positions on and maybe difficult to manage. All these things are important, but even more important and critical in volatile markets. All right, I talked about this sort of delicate monster theory where, they'll allow you to pick up the crumbs and they won't bother you. In fact, they'll maybe, pet you on the head or something like that. That's fine, but don't confront them. All right, because they will literally crush you. And crush you means blown accounts, but also means blown dreams. All right, the why, the reason why you got into this, it's destroyed. And we try to do everything we can to prevent it. But again, using certain mechanics that we talked about here, but also just having the mindset of my job is not to beat the markets, just to pick up the little crumbs. I'll give you another analogy I think may work a little too. Is you go to a blackjack table, all right? If you play blackjack and you go to the casino. You play your hands. You have a sort of negative expectation, but you can have a good weekend and still walk out ahead. But what if the dealer, or the casino walked in and said, I'm only going to play the hands that have an ace dealt to me. And the ones that don't, I'm just going to say, give me my chip back. I'm just going to wait for that next hand. I mean, again, they probably throw you out of the casino. And I made this analogy before, but I want to reemphasize it. Just play the ones where you're dealt the initial cards that are going to, hopefully beat you. Got a nice little breeze going here. I love it. Jersey Shore. So think about that. Just play those hands. Volatile markets, it allows you to take a step back. I know it's difficult. I'm a junkie too, right? But think about doing that and only hit them when the monster is being friendly, all right? Hope this is some good advice. I know it's tough times, and I hear some, really bad, ugly stories of, traders going into the graveyard and, blaming, a lot of people and things and markets. But at the same time, it's the great opportunity if we handle it the right way. All right. I hope you got something out of it. Again, click on the link below if you look for a strategy that'll help you in some of these volatile markets. It's certainly worked for me, and I'm just going to stick to it until it stops working. All right. Hope you enjoyed this and a little tough talk from the sort of coach. All right. And any questions, let me know in the comments, and I'll be happy to answer them. All right. Hang in there. Be strong. Keep size small, and we'll see you next time.